Hello, everyone. Father Jared coming to you, and light. So I've been reading, as I mentioned in my bio, big Lord of the Rings nerd, and something that is just of the utmost importance to the culture of Lord of the Rings is light. We see Frodo in the midst of a cave. He has the light that Galadriel gives him that he drives away the big spider Shelob with. And we also see, later, kind of in the same section of the story, that Sam, who, they're in Mordor and it's dark, it's dingy, it's terrible, it's toxic, all of the things, horrible things you can imagine. And the one thing that gives him just a little bit of hope is he sees a star that shines through the cloudy darkness of Mordor, like no other star shines through, and it kind of gives him enough hope to persevere and continue on to the end. And so light is this all-important theme within the story. But in reality, that's because J.R.R. Tolkien was a Catholic. He was, Christian at his core, and light is extremely important for us as well. And I think it's one of the beautiful things that he brings out in the story that we often can miss. When the Lord talks about, you're like a lamp shining on a lampstand. We're like, okay, cool, we have that right over in the corner. But you have to realize that how rare that was. Light in the ancient world was pretty much governed by the sun. The sun was up, you had light. The sun went down, you didn't have light unless you were extremely rich and you had, your palace was lit by lamps. And even if you weren't quite as rich, you might have a candle, but you probably couldn't use it all, for a very long time. And so light was a very, very, very valuable commodity. And so it was the utmost importance. And that's even kind of the significance whenever at the beginning of his gospel, John, talks about, the Word became flesh, the Word comes into the world, and that the Word is a light shining in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And again, that can maybe become okay, we get it, there's light in the darkness because, we have street lamps, we have car headlights, we have fires, bonfires all the time of year, and just so many other forms, that's kind of a very a rare form, I guess, but nonetheless, we have many, 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 many different sources of light that pervade our experience today. And so I think how very valuable and how rare light was in darkness is, again, kind of lost on us. And I think it's important for us to reflect upon how important light is in the Gospels in order to get it. Why? Because then light is also, it's important in the Scriptures, and so it helps us to understand the Scripture. So I guess that's the first thing, is helps us to understand the biblical worldview. Why was it so important to Jesus? Why was it so important to the Jewish people? Why was it so important to the ancient people in general? I mean, it was extremely, extremely important to all the ancient peoples because of its rarity. But also it's important for us because it's still important for us as Catholics. I mean, if you look at, our Easter Vigil, we still try to keep it as dark as possible to bring in, the Easter candle, again, kind of going back to John's gospel about light shining in the darkness, but also to kind of give the starkness of the resurrection. That in a world of darkness of death, Christ's resurrection breaks through as a beacon of hope that then is spread to all of us. Then we all take our light from the Easter candle and we spread it everywhere. The same way that you would take a baptismal candle for a child, the Godfather would, privilege I've had, and take that light from the Easter candle to then be given to the child as an indication of the light of Christ that's been lit within their own souls. And so the image of light, especially of candlelight, is extremely important for us as Catholics. And again, I emphasize that because because everything is important. I think so often we kind of just say, okay, we need to have candles lit for Mass. Why? Because every single lit candle is a symbol of Christ. It is representative of Christ. It's a representative of his presence among us. That's also why when you walk into a church and you see the vigil lamp, oftentimes, most often red, it's always a candle. Or, I think it also the church permits if it would be like a burning oil lamp. So it's so significantly important that a burning flame is always, again, hearkening back to that first chapter of John's Gospel, a light shining in the darkness, that the light of Christ always shines in the darkness of a world cast in sin, and that from him we have the power to overcome that darkness by spreading to each one of our souls his light that we then take into ourselves. So that is why candles are a huge part of Catholic liturgy, of Catholic spirituality. That's why candles have this important role and centrality for us. And that's kind of why I think it can get lost on us too, because we've just simply forgotten about that fact. We've forgotten that light is significant for Christians as symbolic of Christ coming into the world and driving out from it the darkness of sin, the darkness of Satan, the darkness of deception, and that he reveals everything in his light, and that he even reveals that to us, even by revealing the nooks and crannies of our hearts, which are often, dirty, pitiful, sinful. With that light, he then is enabled to be brought in and to clean it up, so to speak. That by shining the light, he's then able to allow himself to work within our hearts, to purify it, to clean it, and ultimately make it a burning furnace of charity, our hearts, that is. And so it's from that symbol that we take this great power, that the symbol of light is so significant for us. I don't want us to lose it because, again, it's so central to biblical reading. We can't forget it, how important it is, how central it is, and we have to take that into account, that light was a valuable value. It was a resource, really. It still is, because it mostly requires electricity, but it was such a valuable resource. It wasn't ubiquitous. It wasn't everywhere like it is today. And so whenever people talk about light, they were talking about something that they had a limited amount of. It was kind of out of their control, mostly due to the sun. And so that helps us to then better relate with what is being spoken about in the gospel, that light is something given. I think that's also an important point. Light is something that's given. Christ is a light that's given from the Father to us to ignite within our souls the fire of charity, the fire of love, the light of Christ. And it is from that light that then we all receive. So it's something received, not something that we can make, so not something that we produce. It's not something easy like flipping on a switch, but instead it's something given, something received, and then it's something given by the Lord and then received by us in great gratitude. Christ is something to be received in gratitude. Also a good kind of Eucharistic disposition to have. So it's just a little reflection on light. Why? I don't know. I think in particular, again, just perhaps of reading Lord of the Rings, as I often do, but also just of this realization that light is something that we take for granted today, and that if we want to better understand the Gospels, we need to reflect on the fact that light was not something that could be taken for granted at Jesus' time. So with that, I hope you all are having a great week. I'm probably getting back soon from my vacation, so I hope that I hope the priests have been holding down the fort quite well, as I have no doubt they are. And I hope each and every one of you have a good start to your week, and may God bless you and keep you. Peace.